The barricade on the I-24 westbound on-ramp was 3 sawhorses and a length of reflective tape. That's it. Not concrete barriers. Not National Guard vehicles. 3 wooden sawhorses and a strip of tape that caught my headlights like a finish line nobody was meant to cross. I stopped the car. My brother Caleb didn't. What I mean is, I stopped the car. And Caleb reached across from the passenger seat, dropped the transmission into drive, and said, "Go around it." His hand was still on the gear shift. His voice was the same flat tone he used when reading vitals off a monitor. No emphasis, no room for debate. "Caleb, there's a reason they... By dawn, the highway will be impassable. That's not speculation. Go around it." I went around it. I am 31 years old. My name is Nora Vasquez. I have been a certified EMT for 6 years and a licensed paramedic for 3. I worked night shifts on a rig out of TriStar Centennial in Nashville. I have performed CPR on a man in a Waffle House parking lot. I have held pressure on a femoral bleed in the back of a moving ambulance doing 90 on Briley Parkway. I have made split-second calls about who gets the stretcher and who gets the blanket on the curb. I am trained to act. Caleb is trained to predict. He builds catastrophic failure models for a logistics consulting firm. He sees systems the way I see wounds, where the pressure is building, where the failure will cascade, where the rupture will happen 3 moves from now. He'd been awake since 2 in the morning, running numbers on his laptop at the kitchen table of the Airbnb we'd rented for our mother's birthday weekend. And by the time I woke up to the sound of the emergency alert tones screaming from every phone in the house, Caleb had already packed the car. Our mother was still in bed. The alert said, "Shelter in place. Avoid all travel. Await further instruction." Caleb said, "Get Mom. We're leaving in 4 minutes." The alert says stay. The alert is talking to people who don't have a car with a full tank 90 miles from the Kentucky line. We have a window. It closes at dawn. That was 3:47 a.m. The birthday dinner had been the night before. Barbecue at Martin's, the place on 4th Avenue Mom always loved. She'd turned 63. Caleb had given her a first edition copy of a poetry collection she'd been hunting for years. I'd given her a necklace. We were supposed to drive home to Bowling Green in the morning, all 3 of us, caravan style. Normal Sunday, normal life. Our mother, Rosa Vasquez, came down the stairs in her robe, carrying the poetry book and nothing else. Caleb took the book from her hands, put it in the bag he'd already packed with her medications, her wallet, and a change of clothes, and guided her to the back seat. She didn't argue. She'd raised Caleb. She knew the voice. I drove. That was the arrangement, had always been the arrangement. Caleb navigated. I executed. It's the way we'd operated since I was 19 and he was 21. The summer we drove our father's body from Nashville to El Paso for burial and took turns behind the wheel for 13 hours. Caleb picked the routes. I kept us on the road. The streets of Nashville at 3:52 a.m. were not empty. That's the first thing I need to correct. This idea people have that the outbreak started in silence, that you woke up and the world was a still photograph of absence. No. The streets were scattered with movement. Not crowds, not yet. But cars pulling out of driveways with their headlights cutting wild angles. A man in boxer shorts standing on a lawn holding a shotgun, looking at nothing. A woman running, actually running. Barefoot down the center line of Woodland Street with a toddler on her hip. I slowed. Caleb said, "Don't stop." I didn't stop. That was the first one. The first person I didn't stop for. The on-ramp barricade was 6 minutes later. 3 sawhorses. A strip of tape. I drove around it, and we hit the highway at 70 miles an hour. and the road was open in both directions as far as I could see. And Caleb was right. He was right about the window. He was right that the alert was wrong. Not wrong in its intention, but wrong in its assumption that staying put was universally safer than moving. He was right that the system would fail directionally, that southbound lanes into the city would clog first with emergency vehicles, that the northbound lanes would stay clear for maybe 90 minutes before the first wave of civilian evacuees realized the same thing. He was right about all of it. What he was wrong about, what neither of us knew yet, was what the highway would look like in the middle. We were 18 miles north of Nashville when we saw the first body. It was on the shoulder, illuminated by the orange pulse of hazard lights from a pickup truck angled into the ditch. The driver's door was open. The body was face down in the gravel, arms at strange angles. And even at 70 miles an hour, I could see the color of what had pooled beneath the head. Not red, darker, almost black in the pre-dawn light. "Don't slow down," Caleb said. "I see it. I know you see it. Don't slow down." Mom said nothing from the back seat. She had her seatbelt on and her hands folded over the bag Caleb had packed. And she was watching the window the way she watched television, receiving, not reacting. I checked the rear view. Her face was composed. I thought, she survived a civil war in Guatemala before she was 12. She has a gear for this. I was not sure I did. Mile. Marker 94, a sedan sat sideways across the right lane with both front doors open. I merged left without braking. As we passed, I saw a child's car seat in the back. Empty, blanket trailing out the open door onto the asphalt. "Caleb, I see it. Keep going." "There might be..." "There is nobody there, Nora. Look at the interior light. Battery's dead. That car has been sitting for hours. Keep going." He was right. The dome light was off. The car had been there long enough for the battery to drain. Whatever happened to the people inside had happened before the alert, before the barricade, before us. I filed this away the way I'd been trained to information without emotion. Data that adjusts the map. But the blanket trailing out the door kept reappearing in my peripheral vision for miles after. At 4:15 a.m., I turned on the radio. Static on FM. AM had a loop, the same FEMA recording I'd heard on the phone, alert, mechanical and circular. Shelter in place. Avoid contact with symptomatic individuals. Do not approach anyone exhibiting erratic motor behavior or unresponsiveness to verbal commands. The word deceased appeared in the recording exactly once. Do not attempt to assist or transport deceased individuals. Caleb turned it off. "Nora, what's your fuel reading?" "3/4. "Good. Bowling Green is 72 miles. We don't stop for anything." What if someone's hurt on the road? He didn't answer immediately. I heard him inhale through his nose, that specific Caleb inhale that means he's choosing precision over speed. If someone is hurt on the road, we drive past them. "I'm a paramedic. You're my sister in a car with our mother. That's not how triage works. We're not in triage. We're in transit. Those are different systems." From the back seat, Mom said quietly, "Escucha a tu hermano." Listen to your brother. So the hierarchy established itself in the dark on an open highway at 70 miles per hour. Caleb decided, Mom endorsed, I drove. The same architecture we'd built over 30 years of family, reassembled in minutes and bolted to a crisis none of us had imagined 48 hours ago, when the biggest question was whether the restaurant would hold our reservation. The highway stayed clear for another 20 minutes. I began to feel the adrenaline convert into something more sustainable, a focused attention, a thinning of peripheral awareness. My hands were steady. My mirrors were clean. The road ahead was a dark corridor, and we were moving through it efficiently, and I allowed myself a single thought, shaped like hope. We might actually make it home before the sun comes up. 4:38 a.m. An overpass appeared in the headlights, the Route 76 interchange near White House, Tennessee. Under the overpass, parked across both northbound lanes in a deliberate diagonal, was a Tennessee Highway Patrol cruiser. No lights, no officer visible, just the car, angled like a gate. I slowed. "Shoulder," Caleb said. "Go around on the right shoulder, don't stop." It might be a checkpoint. It's not a checkpoint. There's no one in the car. Go around. I swung right, tires biting gravel. And as we passed the cruiser, I looked through the driver's side window. Empty. Keys in the ignition, I could see the fob dangling. On the passenger seat, a radio handset off its cradle and a half-eaten gas station sandwich still in its wrapper. I pulled back onto the asphalt and accelerated. In the rear view, the cruiser shrank, just a dark shape under a dark overpass. But the sandwich stayed with me. The sandwich meant the officer had been sitting there, eating, doing a normal thing, and then had stopped doing the normal thing and left quickly. I pushed to 75. "Caleb, what exactly did the models show you?" "Infection vector moving radially from 3 urban cores, Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville. Consistent with aerosolized or fluid contact pathogen. Mortality to reanimation interval under 90 minutes, based on the Memphis footage. Interstate corridors become kill funnels within 4 to 6 hours of first confirmed outbreak because people flee linearly, and the infected pursue linearly, and the geometry converges." "You got all that from your laptop?" "I got all that from Twitter, Reddit, and 2 FEMA procurement databases that went public 3 hours before the alert. The models just confirmed the timing." He said it without pride. Caleb never performed intelligence. He simply had it. The way I had steady hands, the way Mom had the ability to sit in a back seat during the end of the world and hold a bag of medications with perfect stillness. The road sign said Bowling Green was 54 miles away. 4:51 a.m. The first pileup, not a wreck, a convergence. Vehicles from an exit ramp merging into the highway in a place where merging wasn't designed to happen. I counted 6 cars, a UPS truck, and a minivan, all wedged into a geometry that blocked the left lane and half the right. People were outside their vehicles. I could see them in the headlights, maybe 10, 12 figures, some standing near hoods, some sitting on guardrails, some walking in the space between cars with the aimless rotation of people waiting for a system that no longer exists. I slowed to 30. The right shoulder was clear but narrow, maybe 4 feet between the guardrail and the nearest car. "Shoulder, slow and steady. Don't make eye contact," Caleb said. "They're not infected, Caleb. They're stranded." "I know what they are." A man in a denim jacket stepped toward us as I navigated the gap. He raised both hands, not threatening, supplicating. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it through the glass, but I could read it. "Please." I kept driving. A woman holding a phone screen bright, no signal. I could see the no service banner from 5 feet away, pressed herself against the guardrail to let us pass. She looked at me through the windshield. She was my age. She had mascara tracks on her cheeks and a Vanderbilt sweatshirt, and she looked at me the way patients look at you when the ambulance arrives, the look that says you are the system. You are the mechanism by which I survive. I kept driving. We cleared the pileup. In the rear view, I watched the figures recede, still standing between their cars. None of them tried to follow. None of them ran. They just stood there, holding phones that couldn't call anyone, waiting for headlights that weren't going to stop. Mom said, "How many?" 12, maybe 15, I said. Children? I hadn't looked for children. I didn't know. I said, "I don't think so." And I wasn't lying because I genuinely hadn't seen any. But I also hadn't looked. And the not looking was its own kind of decision. Caleb checked his phone. Signal's gone, dropped about 2 miles back. So we're dark. We're dark. No radio, no cell, no data. The car became a sealed unit. 3 people, a full tank, and a road. I felt the simplicity of it settle around me like a pressure change. In the ambulance, I always had dispatch. I always had protocol. I always had the next hospital, the next crew, the next set of hands to receive what I carried. Now the car was the ambulance, and the destination was home, and there was no one to hand off to. 5:04 a.m. The sky ahead showed the first gray suggestion of dawn along the eastern tree line. We were in the corridor between White House and the Kentucky border rolling farmland. Low hills. The kind of landscape that looks painterly at sunrise and anonymous at every other hour. The highway was empty again. I pushed to 80. "Slow down," Caleb said. "We need to slow down. Tire debris ahead, right lane." I saw it, a shredded truck tire, the kind that peels off 18-wheelers in long black ribbons. I moved left and past it. Then another, then a third, this one draped over the center line like something skinned. Caleb, ahead. The truck was jackknifed across both lanes. An 18-wheeler, cab angled sharply left, trailer swung perpendicular, blocking the entire highway. The cab's windshield was shattered inward, not from impact, from something that had come through it. I braked hard. Mom's bag slid off her lap. We stopped 60 feet from the trailer. Silence. Engine idling. Headlights illuminating the corrugated metal wall of the trailer broadside. "Median," Caleb said. "Can you cross the median?" I looked left. The median was 20 feet of grass and a shallow drainage ditch. Soft ground. Possible in dry conditions. It had rained 2 days ago. Maybe. If we get stuck, we're on foot. Go. I turned the wheel. We dropped off the shoulder, front tires digging into wet grass. The car lurched, found traction, rolled through the ditch with a scrape of undercarriage. I held second gear and powered up the opposite slope onto the southbound lanes. Empty. I swung north, driving the wrong way, headlights facing the direction we'd come from. I passed the jackknife truck from the opposite side. The cab door was open. The driver was in the seat. He was moving. Not the way a living person moves. He was pulling himself forward against the seatbelt, rhythmically, like a dog straining at a leash, his arms reaching through the shattered windshield toward the sound of our engine. His face was gray, and his jaw was working, opening, closing, opening, and there was no sound coming out that I could hear over the engine. But the motion was unmistakable. I have seen a lot of things in ambulances. I have seen death in many configurations. This was not death. This was something using the body after the person had left it. I crossed back over the median, fishtailed onto the northbound shoulder, and accelerated. No one spoke for 3 miles. The Kentucky border is marked by a green sign that says, "Welcome to Kentucky, the Bluegrass State." We passed it at 5:19 a.m., doing 78 in the right lane with the sky turning the color of old pewter to the east. I remember the sign because I remember thinking, borders don't mean anything anymore, but I'm glad to see it anyway. The human brain looking for mile markers in a race that doesn't have them. Bowling Green was 31 miles. Caleb had his laptop open, running on battery. No signal. He was doing something with offline maps, tracing alternate routes, marking exits, building a decision tree for a network that no longer had real-time data. He worked silently, fingers moving on the trackpad with the economy of someone who'd been optimizing systems since he was 14 and built a scheduling algorithm for our father's landscaping crews. If 65 is blocked at the Bowling Green interchange, we take exit 22 to Russellville Road and come in from the west. If Russellville is blocked, we take Cemetery Road to Small House and approach from the south. If both are blocked, we walk. We drive as far as we can, and then we walk. Mom, how far can you walk? From the back seat. Far enough. That's not a distance. It's the only answer I have, mijo. Caleb closed his laptop. I saw his jaw tighten, not anger, recalibration. He was adjusting the model for a variable he couldn't quantify. Our mother's body, 63 years old, arthritic in both knees, medicated for hypertension, carrying the weight of a woman who had walked across the Mexican border at 11 and was now being asked to walk through the American apocalypses at 63. He couldn't build a formula for that. It visibly bothered him. 20 minutes, I said. Maybe less. If the road stays clear. If the road stays clear. The road did not stay clear. 5:28 a.m. The traffic appeared like weather, not suddenly, but as a thickening. First one car, parked on the shoulder with its blinkers on. Then two more, 100 yards apart. Then a cluster of 5 or 6. Then a continuous line, both lanes, stretching forward into the gray dawn as far as the headlights could reach. Stopped. All of them stopped. Shoulder, Caleb said. The shoulder's full. It was. Cars parked and abandoned, doors open, people nowhere. An entire lane of vehicles that had tried the same thing we were about to try and had failed or had simply left. I slowed to a crawl, threading between a pickup truck on the left and a sedan on the right, mirrors folding against metal. There. Caleb pointed. A gap in the right shoulder, maybe 30 feet of clear gravel between an SUV and a concrete barrier. I nosed into it and stopped. Ahead, the highway was a parking lot. I could see maybe a quarter-mile of solid vehicles, some with lights on, most dark. The I-65 interchange, our exit to Bowling Green, was visible on the horizon as a cluster of overhead signs. Between us and those signs were approximately 400 cars and the uncertain contents of each one. I turned off the engine. The silence was sudden and physical. Then the sounds arrived. A car alarm cycling somewhere ahead. A dog barking sharp, continuous, unanswered. And under both of those, a sound I couldn't place at first. A low, arrhythmic murmur, like wind through a building, with too many open windows. People, Mom said. She was right. The murmur was human voices, dozens of them, carried across the distance in fragments. Not screaming, not yet. Just the sound of hundreds of people in stopped cars trying to figure out what to do. Their words merging into a single, unintelligible frequency. Nora. Caleb's voice had changed, not in volume and texture. I miscalculated. What? The convergence point. I assumed it would happen south of the border. It happened here. The Nashville evacuation wave hit the Bowling Green commuter traffic. Both populations collided at the interchange. So, we're in the kill funnel. We're at the entrance to the kill funnel. It gets narrower ahead. I looked at the fuel gauge, just under half. I looked at the clock. 5:31. Dawn was maybe 30 minutes away. I looked at the line of cars stretching toward our exit and calculated the distance the way I calculate response times on the rig. Not in miles, but in minutes. Walking speed, 3 miles per hour. Distance to the interchange, maybe a mile and a half. 30 minutes on foot, open and exposed. With Mom, through a corridor of stopped vehicles containing an unknown number of people in an unknown number of conditions. Or we sit here, engine off, fuel conserved. Wait. Wait for what? Caleb, what's the model say about sitting? Sitting is a zero-velocity death. The corridor fills from behind. The infected follow the density. We have maybe 40 minutes before the trailing edge of the Nashville wave reaches this position. You're guessing. I'm estimating. There's a difference, and right now, it's the only thing we have. I opened the glove compartment. Inside was the trauma kit I keep in every vehicle I've ever owned. Not the full rig bag, just the basics. Hemostatic gauze, pressure bandages, a tourniquet, chest seals, shears, nitrile gloves, a pen light, items designed for a world where you stabilize and hand off. There was no one to hand off to. I put the kit in my jacket and zipped it shut. We walk, I said. Getting Mom out of the car was not the hard part. The hard part was watching her stand on the shoulder of a Tennessee interstate at 5:34 a.m. Put on the shoes Caleb had packed for her, straighten her back, and look at the corridor of stopped cars the way she might look at a long grocery aisle with the practical assessment of a woman who has spent her life measuring distances between where she is and where she needs to be. She didn't ask how far. She just started walking. Caleb carried the bag. I walked 12 feet ahead, scanning. The cars on either side formed walls. Some were occupied. Most were not. The occupied ones showed themselves in small ways. A fogged windshield, a face pressed against glass, the movement of a phone screen in a dark interior. Nobody opened their doors as we passed. The etiquette of disaster had already taken hold, the unspoken agreement that the space between vehicles belonged to movement, and that anyone moving had a destination they couldn't be helped toward. In one car, a woman was breastfeeding an infant. In another, an old man slept with his mouth open, hearing aid visible in the dome light. In a third, 2 teenage boys sat in the back seat of a Hyundai watching something on a tablet, headphones on, faces slack with the particular concentration of people who have decided not to participate in what's happening around them. 300 yards in, we encountered the first abandoned cluster. Doors open, engines off, belongings scattered on the asphalt. A suitcase burst open, clothes strewn in a fan pattern. A child-stuffed rabbit face down on the center line. The absence was more unsettling than the occupied cars. These people had been here and had left quickly, on foot, and the direction they'd gone was not obvious. "Stay center," Caleb said, away from the open doors. I know. I'm saying it for Mom. I heard him, Mom said. She was keeping pace. Slower than us, but steady, her hand on Caleb's elbow, her eyes forward. She was wearing the birthday necklace I'd given her. I could see it catch the gray light each time she stepped into a gap between cars. At the 400-yard mark, I heard the sound. It was different from the murmur. It was a single voice, high and strained, coming from somewhere ahead and to the right. Not a scream, a call, repeating the same word over and over, at intervals of about 5 seconds. "Help," I stopped. "Keep moving," Caleb said behind me. "Someone is calling for help." "I hear it. Keep moving." "Help." Closer now. Coming from a minivan 2 car lengths ahead, right lane. The sliding door was open about 8 inches, not fully, as if it had been opened by someone without the strength to push it all the way. I walked to the van. Caleb said my name not loudly, not as a command, but as a marker. Nora. Meaning, I see what you're doing. I note it. I object, but I will not stop you. I looked through the gap. A woman, mid-40s, in the driver's seat, twisted sideways. Her right leg was pinned between the seat and the steering column the airbag had deployed, and pushed the seat backward at an angle that trapped her knee. She had a laceration across her forehead, dried blood down the left side of her face, and her hands were shaking. "Please," she said, "my knee. I can't get out." I opened the door fully. I pulled on my nitrile gloves. I crouched beside her and assessed. The knee was compressed, not crushed. Soft tissue, not bone. The airbag deflation had created a pocket of space that a hard push could widen. The laceration was superficial. Scalp wounds bleed dramatically, but this one had already clotted. "I'm going to push the seat back. It's going to hurt for a second, and then you'll be free, okay?" She nodded. I braced my shoulder against the seat bracket and pushed. The mechanism gave. Her leg slid free. She gasped a sharp intake that became a sob that she cut off with her own hand over her mouth. "Can you stand?" She could. I helped her out. She stood on the asphalt, tested her knee, winced, held. "Where are you going?" she asked. "North. Bowling Green exit." "Can I come with you?" I looked at Caleb. He was standing 10 feet away, bag on his shoulder, Mom beside him. His face was unreadable in the gray light. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. He looked at me the way dispatch looks at you when you call in a deviation from protocol, noting it for the record, letting you own the consequence. "What's your name?" I asked. "Dana. Dana Reeves." "Dana, can you walk a mile?" "I can try." We were 4 now. 600 yards from the interchange, the corridor changed. The cars were closer together, some touching, bumpers interlocked in the slow-motion compression of a traffic jam that had become permanent. Walking between them required turning sideways, edging through gaps, helping Mom over a hood when the space between 2 trucks narrowed to inches. The sky was lightening. I could see color now, the red of brake lights that had burned all night and were finally dying as batteries drained, the green of exit signs ahead, the specific gray-pink of a Tennessee dawn that, in another life, I would have called beautiful. I could also see movement that was not ours. At first, it was peripheral, a shift in the geometry of the car line, something changing 4 or 5 vehicles to the right that I couldn't identify directly. I stopped, watched. Nothing. I moved forward. The movement came again, a shape passing between 2 cars, low and quick, disappearing behind a truck bed before I could fix on it. "Caleb, I see it. What is it? Could be a person, could be a dog. Keep moving, but faster." We accelerated. Mom's breathing changed shorter, more deliberate. Dana was limping but matching pace. I threaded us through a gap between a school bus and a flatbed trailer and emerged on the other side into a brief stretch of clear asphalt, maybe 40 feet of open road where a tow truck had been pulled onto the shoulder and its absence created a pocket. In the pocket, sitting on the asphalt with his back against the tow truck's rear wheel, was a man. Alive, conscious, holding a tire iron across his knees. He was maybe 60, short gray hair, work jacket, the kind of thick-soled boots you see on utility crews. He watched us emerge from between the cars without surprise and without alarm. His eyes moved from me to Caleb, to Mom, to Dana, and back to me with a systematic assessment of someone who has been categorizing every person who passes. "You heading for the interchange?" he asked. "Yes. It's blocked." Pile up at the overpass. 6, 7 cars deep. Nobody's getting through on the road. We're on foot. On foot you can get through, but you'll go over the barrier and down the embankment on the north side. It's steep, but it's doable. I've watched about 30 people do it in the last hour. Thank you. The ones that didn't make it went between the cars at the pileup. Don't do that. There's something's in there. In the pileup. Moving around in the cars. I've heard it. 40 minutes now, moving around. Metal on metal. Don't go between the cars. His voice was calm. Not the calm of peace. The calm of someone who has processed fear to its endpoint and arrived at information. He delivered it like a weather report. Are you staying here? I asked. My wife's in the truck. He tilted his head toward a white pickup 3 cars back. She's got a broken collarbone from the stop. Can't climb. I'm waiting for it to clear. Paramedic instinct. Is she stabilized? I used her scarf as a sling. She's got ibuprofen. She's okay for now. I pulled 2 pressure bandages from my kit and handed them to him. If it swells and she can't breathe, these go tight around the upper arm to reduce movement. Keep her elevated. He took them, looked at me. You're medical? Yeah. God bless you then. Go. Get your people over that barrier. We moved. I did not offer to look at his wife. I did not offer to stay. I made the calculation. Collarbone, sling, ibuprofen, stable, and I used the calculation as permission to keep walking, the way I'd used the battery-dead dome light as permission to pass that first car 6 lifetimes ago on the highway south of here. But the tire iron man's warning stayed. Something in the pileup, moving between the cars. Metal on metal. 40 minutes. The interchange was 300 yards ahead, and the dawn was coming. And my brother had been right. The highway was worse by dawn. But Caleb hadn't predicted what worse meant. He'd predicted congestion, convergence, a failing system. What was in the pileup ahead wasn't a system failing. It was a new system starting. The pileup at the I-65 overpass was not an accident. It was an architecture. Multiple somebodies had driven vehicles into a deliberate wedge across all 4 lanes, using the overpass guardrails as anchoring points. It wasn't random. The placement was too symmetrical. A dump truck at the center, flanked by 2 sedans, backed by an SUV on each side. The gaps filled with smaller cars that had been pushed into position with their wheels turned. A barricade, built by people who understood leverage and choke points. But the builders were gone. Whatever organization had created this structure had dissolved. And what remained was a wall of metal across the highway with a drop-off on the north side and a corridor of compressed cars on the south. The tire iron man had said, "Go over the barrier on the north side. Don't go between the cars." I could hear what he'd heard. Inside the pileup, between the layered vehicles, something was moving. Not rhythmic, not patterned. A scrape, a pause, a thud, another scrape. Metal on metal, a hand or a limb dragging across a car panel, catching on a side mirror, releasing, dragging again. The sound had the quality of something moving without destination, following surfaces, tracing walls it couldn't see past. North barrier, Caleb said. Now. The barrier was a concrete jersey wall, chest height, running along the edge of the overpass where it met the embankment. On the other side, a grassy slope dropping 20 feet to the surface road below, which ran beneath the overpass and connected to Russellville Road, our alternate route into Bowling Green. Caleb went first. He put the bag over, then himself, swinging both legs and dropping to the slope below. He turned and raised his arms. "Mom, come on." I helped her up onto the barrier. She sat on the concrete, swung her legs, and Caleb caught her below. She made a sound small, involuntary as the slope took her weight and her knees absorbed the grade. But she stayed upright. Caleb held her. Dana went next. Her injured knee buckled on the landing, and she sat down hard on the grass. But she was over. I was last. I sat on the barrier and looked back at the highway one more time. The corridor of cars stretched south into the growing light. Thousands of them, still and silent. A road turned into a graveyard for the idea of movement. Somewhere inside the pileup, the scraping sound continued patient, exploring, unhurried. I dropped. The slope was steep and wet. I slid the last 8 feet on my back, denim jacket riding up, the trauma kit in my chest pocket digging into my ribs. Caleb caught my arm at the bottom and pulled me upright. We stood on the surface road beneath the overpass. The light was different here, sheltered gray-green, the concrete above us blocking the dawn. The road ran east-west. East led to a residential area. West led to Russellville Road and eventually our house. West, Caleb said. We walked west. The surface road was empty of cars, but not of evidence. Belongings littered the shoulder's bags, shoes, a collapsed stroller, a guitar case. People had come this way, on foot, shedding weight as they went. The trail of abandoned items told a story of diminishing priorities. First the heavy things, then the sentimental things, then the useful things, until what remained was only the body and its forward motion. At the end of the surface road, where it intersected Russellville, we stopped. A gas station sat on the corner. The windows were intact. The pumps were dark. The parking lot held 3 cars, all empty, all with doors closed. A handwritten sign was taped to the glass door. No gas, no phone. God help. Beyond the gas station, Russellville Road stretched west toward Bowling Green, a 2-lane blacktop cutting through open farmland. No trees, no cover. Dawn light spreading across it like a stain. Our house was 11 miles down that road. Mom sat on the curb outside the gas station. She didn't ask to. She just sat. I knelt beside her, checked her pulsar reflex, not a decision, and found it elevated, but regular. Her color was off, pale beneath the brown, lips dry. She'd had nothing to drink since the barbecue restaurant. "We need water," I said. Caleb tried the gas station door. Locked. He walked around the side. I heard glass break a small window, bathroom-sized. A minute later, the front door opened from inside. He emerged with 4 bottles of water and a bag of peanuts. "There's a body in the stockroom," he said. Old, days old, not moving. Doors locked between the stockroom and the sales floor. "How old?" "Decomposition, not reanimation. Whatever killed him did it before the outbreak. Heart attack, stroke, he's sitting in a chair. Died where he sat." I handed Mom a water bottle. She drank half without pausing. Dana drank all of hers. I drank 1/3 of mine and gave the rest to Caleb, who didn't drink it. 11 miles, he said. That's about 3.5 hours at Mom's pace. We'll be on an exposed road in full daylight. I know. If we see anything moving on that road, we have no cover. I know. Do you want to wait here until dark? I looked at the gas station. Glass doors, no barricade. A dead man in the stockroom. 12 hours of waiting in a box that couldn't be secured, burning daylight that we might need, trusting that the kill funnel on the highway above us wouldn't spill down the embankment while we sat. "No," I said. "We walk." Russellville Road at 6:10 a.m. was the emptiest landscape I have ever occupied. The farmland on both sides was winter bare. No crops, no foliage. just brown fields extending to tree lines a quarter-mile away on each side. The road was a straight line. You could see a mile ahead and a mile behind. Anything on that road would be visible from every direction, including us. We walked in the road, not on the shoulder. Caleb's logic: the road surface was faster, and if we needed to run, asphalt gave better traction than gravel. Running. I looked at Mom. Running was not in the model. Dana walked beside me. She had a limp, but she was managing it, favoring the good knee, using a rhythm she'd found: 3 normal steps, 1 short step, repeat. She hadn't spoken since we left the highway. Now she said quietly, so Caleb and Mom wouldn't hear. "The van, where you found me. My daughter was in the back seat when we crashed." I didn't stop walking. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. I blacked out. When I woke up, she was gone. Her door was open." "How old?" 14. I had no response that would help. I had clinical responses. She may have gone for help. She may have been found by another group. A 14-year-old is mobile and resourceful. All of them were true, and none of them were what Dana needed. What Dana needed was her daughter in her arms, and I couldn't provide that. And every other sentence was a substitution. "What's her name?" "Lily. We'll get to our house. There's a landline. If the landlines are up, we can call. Okay?" She said it the way patients say okay when you tell them the ambulance is 5 minutes out, and they both know 5 minutes is a long time. Agreement without belief. Permission for you to stop talking. We walked. The sun crested the tree line and hit us full January sun, low and cold, casting long shadows that walked ahead of us on the asphalt like scouts. My shadow was the tallest. Caleb's was the broadest. Mom's was small and precise. Dana's limped. At the 1-mile mark, a farmhouse appeared on the left. White clapboard, red roof, long gravel driveway. A truck in the driveway. Lights on inside. Curtains closed. "Don't look," Caleb said. "Don't slow down. There are people in there. Good for them. They're behind walls. We're not. They might have a vehicle. They might have a rifle and a territorial instinct. Keep walking." We kept walking. But I watched the farmhouse in my peripheral vision as it passed. And I saw the curtain move. Someone was watching us the way we were watching them through a narrow gap, measuring threat, deciding whether we were people or problems. We passed each other's tests. Neither of us opened a door. Mile 2, mile 3. Mom's pace was dropping. Not dramatically, she'd gone from a steady walk to something just below it. A gear between walking and stopping that I recognized from geriatric patients, compensating for pain they won't report. "Mom, do you need to rest?" "No." "Your knees?" I said, "No, Nora. We can take 5 minutes. 5 minutes is 5 minutes longer on this road. I'll rest at home." Caleb glanced at me, a look that said, "She's right. And also she's lying. And also there's nothing we can do about either." Mile 4. A sound behind us. I turned. The road stretched back the way we'd come, flat and empty, and lit by the risen sun. I saw nothing. But I heard it, a rhythmless scuffling on asphalt. The sound of feet moving without coordination. Not one set of feet. Multiple, overlapping. The acoustic signature of bodies walking at different speeds in roughly the same direction. "Caleb." He turned, looked, saw what I saw. Nothing visible yet, but the sound was there, carried by the cold air across the flat terrain. And it was behind us, and it was moving our direction. "Faster," he said. Not a command, an observation, a calculation delivered as a single word. We went faster. You cannot run with a 63-year-old woman who has arthritic knees. You cannot hurry her by pulling her arm. You cannot yell faster because she's already going as fast as the architecture of her body allows, and your urgency changes nothing except her heart rate, which is already too high. What you can do is what Caleb did. He put his arm around her waist and matched her step exactly, taking a fraction of her weight with each stride, turning his body into a brace. Not carrying her, she would have refused that, but sharing load. It added maybe 15% to her speed, and it cost him his own mobility entirely, locking him to her pace, making him the slowest person in the group by choice. I fell back. Dana was ahead of me, limping hard, face white. I was now the rear guard, the one watching behind us on the flat road. At first, there was only sound. Then there was shape. They emerged from the heat shimmer distance like a stain spreading on paper. 7, 8, maybe 10 figures on the road, about half a mile back. They were not running. They were walking at a pace that was wrong, not synchronized, not patterned, but relentless. The gait of something that doesn't tire because it doesn't feel. I've seen marathon runners at mile 20 hit a mechanical stride where the body moves independently of will. This was that, without the runner inside. Half a mile, our pace. Maybe 2.5 miles per hour with Mom. Their pace, maybe 3. The math was simple and terrible. They would close the gap in roughly 30 minutes. We had 7 miles to go. Caleb, they're gaining. He didn't look back. How many? 8 to 10, half a mile. Rate? Walking, faster than us. He said nothing for several steps. I watched him thinking, watched the calculation run behind his eyes the way I'd watched it run 1,000 times. At the kitchen table, in the car, over our father's logistics problems. But this time, the input variable was our mother's knees, and no model optimizes around that. The farmhouse back there, Dana started. We passed it 2 miles ago. Going back is going toward them. Then what? Caleb pointed ahead. The road curved slightly, the first curve since we'd started, and beyond the curve, set back about 100 yards from the road, was a low metal building. Agricultural, a barn or equipment shed. Tin-roofed, windowless on the side facing us, with a wide rolling door that might or might not be locked. There, he said. We don't know if it's open. We don't know anything. We go there. We left the road. The field between us and the building was stubble, last year's corn, cut to ankle height, frozen dirt beneath. Mom's pace dropped again on the uneven ground. Caleb bore more of her weight. I turned to watch the road. The figures were visible now, distinct. I could count them, 9. They had reached the stretch of road we'd just left. 2 of them stopped, or rather, their momentum shifted, their trajectory bending. They'd noticed us. The change was subtle. A turning of heads, a reorientation of that mechanical gait toward the field, toward us. They see us. I know. Keep going. The building was 60 yards away. 50, 40. The rolling door came into view, a large steel panel on a track, padlocked at the bottom. Locked. Caleb set Mom against the wall and ran to the door. He grabbed the padlock, pulled, tested. Solid. He looked at the track. The door hung from a rail at the top, the kind of industrial slide door you see on warehouses. Nora, your shears. I pulled the trauma shears from my kit. Caleb took them, climbed the door's frame to the track mechanism, and began working on the bolt that held the track to the wall bracket. Trauma shears are not a tool for this. They are designed to cut clothing, seat belts, thin plastic. But Caleb used the leverage point between the blades to twist the bolt, working it back and forth. And the bolt was old, and the bracket was rusted. And after 40 seconds that felt like 4 minutes, the bolt sheared, and the door sagged on its track. He dropped down, put his shoulder to the door, and pushed. It scraped sideways 18 inches. Enough. In, now. Donna went first, then Mom. I turned at the gap and looked across the field. They were in the stubble, all 9. Not running, you have to understand this. They don't run at you like in the movies. They walk. They walk, and they don't stop, and they don't slow, and they don't get tired, and they don't reconsider. They were 300 yards away and closing at a pace that would reach this building in about 6 minutes. I went through the gap. Caleb came last and pulled the door shut behind him. The remaining bolts held it in place. One was missing. The gap at the top where the door met the wall was maybe 3 inches. Inside, dark. The smell of oil and hay and cold metal. I could make out shapes. A tractor, a workbench, shelving. The floor was poured concrete, cracked, stained. No other doors visible, no windows on this side. A shaft of light came from the far wall, a ventilation gap near the roofline, horizontal, maybe 12 inches high and 3 feet wide. Mom sat on the concrete, back against a wheel of the tractor. Dana stood beside her. Caleb was already moving through the space, touching walls, testing surfaces, mapping the interior the way he mapped everything systematically, without wasted motion. Workbench has tools. Wrenches, a pry bar, a box cutter. No firearms. What's behind the tractor? Storage, feed bags, a fuel can mostly empty. A door. What door? Small, padlocked from this side. Leads outside, north wall. A second exit. Padlocked from inside, meaning it could be opened without tools. I felt the geometry of the building rearrange in my head. One compromised entrance on the south. One functional exit on the north. If they came through the rolling door, we could go out the back. 6 minutes, I said. Maybe 5 now. I know. What happens when they reach the door? Caleb picked up the pry bar from the workbench. He didn't answer. Caleb, what happens? They push. The door holds or it doesn't. If it holds, they lose interest or they don't. If it doesn't hold, we go out the back and we're on the road again with a 60-yard head start. That's not a plan. That's a sequence. Every plan is a sequence. Ours just has fewer steps. They arrived at 6:48 a.m. I know because I checked my watch, the analog one Dad gave me when I graduated EMT school. The one that doesn't need a signal or a battery. 6:48 a.m. on what should have been the morning after my mother's birthday dinner in a farm equipment shed in rural Kentucky, listening to 9 reanimated bodies find the door. The sound was worse than seeing them. Without visual reference, every scrape and bump became an imagined geometry, a hand testing the door's resistance, a body pressing its weight forward, a head turning sideways to fit through a gap that might or might not be wide enough. The 3-inch gap where the broken bolt had been was at the top of the door, above sightline. I couldn't see them. I could only hear them and know they were there. Mom had her eyes closed, not sleeping, processing. Her lips were moving without sound. Praying, maybe, or counting, or reciting something she'd memorized in a language I didn't speak well enough to follow. Dana was beside her, hand on her own knee, pressing against the injury as if pain were a resource she could redirect. She was watching the door with the focused attention of someone who's made a decision, I just didn't know what decision. Caleb stood 4 feet from the door with the pry bar. His body was still. His breathing was controlled. He was waiting the way a system waits, not passively, but in active readiness, every variable accounted for, every outcome mapped to an action. The door moved. An inch inward, then back. The remaining bolts groaned. The sound from outside intensified, more bodies pressing, more weight applied to a surface that wasn't designed to resist this kind of distributed, persistent force. "Nora, open the back door. Get Mom and Dana to the north side." I moved to the back of the shed. The padlock was a simple hasp. I lifted it, pulled the door open. Cold morning air and gray light flooded in. The north side of the building faced an open field, a fence line, and beyond that, more farmland stretching toward a tree line. No road visible, no structures. "Mom, come on." She stood. Caleb's bag was still on her shoulder. She walked to the back door and stepped through without looking back. Dana followed. "Caleb, go. I'm behind you." "Caleb, come now." The rolling door shuddered. One of the lower bolts snapped, a sharp metallic pop that echoed in the enclosed space. The door lurched inward, 4 inches. Through the new gap at the bottom, I could see feet. Shoes, boots, bare skin. Moving without rhythm, shuffling forward. Caleb swung the pry bar once against the door, not at the gap, but at the frame beside it. A percussive strike that rang like a bell. The shuffling outside paused, then resumed, then increased. He turned and walked to me, unhurried, and through the back door and into the light. I closed the back door and dropped the hasp. It wouldn't hold no padlock on this side, but it might buy seconds. "The tree line," I said. "Across the field. We get into cover." We moved across the field. Mom between Caleb and me, Dana on the far side. The stubble crunched under our feet. Behind us, the sound of the rolling door failing, a long, grinding screech of metal on concrete as it was pushed off its remaining track. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The sound told me everything. They were through, and they were in the shed, and it would take them seconds to find the back door. And then they would be in the field behind us, and the distance game would start again. The tree line was 200 yards away. Mom was slowing. Her breath was ragged, not distressed, not yet, but close to a threshold I recognized from patients in the field. The threshold where the body begins to choose between movement and oxygen, where the system starts shutting down non-essential functions to preserve the core. "Mom, look at the trees. Only the trees. We're almost there." "I see them." 100 yards. Caleb was half carrying her now, his arm fully around her waist, her feet barely touching the ground. She weighed maybe 130 pounds. He was absorbing most of it. His face was red. His steps were shortening. 50 yards. Behind us, I looked. I couldn't help it. 5 of the 9 had emerged from the back of the shed. They were in the field. They were oriented toward us. They were walking. 20 yards. The tree line was a mix of bare hardwoods and a few cedars, enough cover to break line of sight, enough density to slow pursuit if they followed by sight rather than sound. We hit the trees. Mom's knees buckled as we crossed from open field into the undergrowth, and Caleb went down with her, both of them landing on a carpet of dead leaves. Dana dropped beside them, pulling her jacket off and putting it under Mom's head. I stood at the tree line and watched the field. They were coming. 5 of them, spread out in a rough line, crossing the stubble at their tireless mechanical pace. 300 yards, closing. We needed to move. We could not move. Mom was on the ground, chest heaving, face ashen. Caleb was kneeling beside her, checking her pulse the way I'd taught him years ago, 2 fingers on the carotid, counting for 15 seconds. His face told me the number before he said it. 160. She needs to rest. She needs to not be here when they arrive. I know what she needs, Nora. Then pick her up. She can't take it. Her heart rate is... I know her heart rate. I know what it means. Pick her up or we die here. He looked at me. In that look was every calculation he'd ever run, every model, every optimization, and behind all of it, the single variable no model could process: his mother's body failing on the ground in January, with 5 things that used to be people walking toward her across a frozen field. He picked her up. We went north through the trees, not fast, not strategically. We went the direction that was away, and I counted steps because counting was the only system I had left. Caleb carried Mom for 400 steps. Then his arms gave. I took her for the next 200. She was light, but the terrain was uneven. Roots and rocks and frozen mud. And my shoulders burned with a specific fire that I knew meant muscle failure in minutes, not hours. Dana, limping, carried the bag. At 600 steps, the trees thinned and we hit a gravel road. Single lane, private, running east-west. A mailbox stood at the junction, leaning, the name illegible. I set Mom down. She was conscious, eyes open, tracking. Heart rate still too high, but she was breathing more evenly. She looked at me and said, "Which way?" "West. Always west." Bowling Green was west. We turned right on the gravel road and walked. I listened behind us. The trees were silent. Whether the 5 had followed through the woods or lost us at the tree line, I couldn't tell. The absence of sound was not the same as the absence of threat, but it was all I had. The gravel road ran for half a mile, then intersected a paved county road. A stop sign, a speed limit sign, 35. A ditch on both sides, shallow, winter dry. And on the southwest corner, a church. Small, white, steeple, gravel parking lot with 6 cars. The front door was closed. A paper sign on the door that I couldn't read from the road. "There might be people in there," Dana said. "There are definitely people in there," Caleb said. 6 cars. "Then we should keep walking." I looked at Mom. She was standing, but the way a building stands after an earthquake, upright through inertia, not integrity. She needed to sit down somewhere warm. She needed water. She needed her blood pressure medication, which was in the bag, which she hadn't taken because we'd been running for our lives since 3:47 a.m. "We're going to the church," I said. Caleb looked at me. "Mom needs to rest somewhere enclosed. She needs her medication. Dana needs to get off that knee. We need water. The church has people and walls and probably water, and we're going. We don't know those people. We don't need to know them. We need a room and 20 minutes. 20 minutes on that field was the difference between... This isn't the field. This is a church on a county road, and Mom's blood pressure is stroking out, and I'm making the call." He held my gaze. Caleb doesn't argue with raised voices or dramatic gestures. He argues with silence, the specific, pressurized silence of a man who disagrees and is deciding whether the cost of losing exceeds the cost of the fight. He looked at Mom. He looked at the church. He nodded once. We crossed the road. The sign on the door read, "Doors open. Come in. Stay quiet. No weapons inside." I pushed the door open. Inside, pews, dim light through stained glass, the smell of coffee and bodies and candle wax. 11 people. I counted them the way I count patients in a mass casualty, quickly, categorically. 4 women, 3 men, 2 teenagers, 2 children under 10. Most were sitting in pews. 1 man stood near the altar, hands in his pockets. A woman at a folding table near the back was pouring water from a plastic jug into paper cups. Every face turned to us. The man near the altar stepped forward. Mid-50s, slim, collared shirt. No clergy vestments, but the posture of someone who speaks from that position regularly. "Come in. Close the door. Are any of you injured? My mother needs to sit down. Do you have water?" "We have water. Come in." We came in. Mom sat in the nearest pew. The woman with the water brought a cup. Dana sat beside her. Caleb stood in the aisle, bag over his shoulder, surveying the space with the same systematic inventory he'd done in the shed exits. Tools, geometry. "I'm Pastor Lewis," the man said. "Ray Lewis. We're just people. We came here because it was open and it felt right. Most of us are from the houses up the road." "How long have you been here?" "Since about 4 this morning. The alert woke most of us. We came here because the cell towers went down, and we didn't know what else to do." "Have you seen any of them? The infected?" His face changed, a tightening around the eyes. "One, early. It came up the road from the south, walked past the church, didn't stop. We watched it through the window. It used to be Calvin Embry. He owns the feed store on Route 68. Used to be." He said it naturally, the way you say someone used to live in a house. The past tense had already been absorbed into the grammar of this new world. Calvin Embry used to be Calvin Embry. Now he was something else, walking past a church where people who knew his name watched from behind stained glass and did not open the door. We stayed at the church for 43 minutes. I monitored the time because monitoring time was the only diagnostic tool I had for an environment I couldn't control. 43 minutes. Mom took her blood pressure medication, drank 2 cups of water, ate a handful of crackers the pastor's wife had brought from their house across the road. Color improved. Heart rate dropped to 96. Acceptable. Not safe. Acceptable. During those 43 minutes, I did something I had not done since we left Nashville. I treated people. A woman named Arlene had a deep laceration on her left forearm from breaking a window to get into her own house when she'd locked herself out during the panic. I cleaned it with bottled water, applied hemostatic gauze, wrapped it. A teenager, 15, maybe 16, had been running through his backyard in the dark and stepped on a board with a nail. The puncture was in the sole of his right foot, swollen, red, early signs of infection. I cleaned it, expressed what I could, bandaged it, and told his mother to watch for red streaks climbing toward the ankle. I used almost everything in my kit: the shears, the gauze, the bandages, the pen light. By the time I was done, the kit held 1 chest seal and a pair of nitrile gloves. Caleb watched me work. He said nothing. But I saw his face, and his face said, "Every minute here is a minute on the road. Every supply you give away is a supply we don't have. Every person you touch becomes a person who knows you're medical. And people who know you're medical don't let you leave." He was right. When I stood up from the teenager's foot, Pastor Lewis said, "You could stay. We could use someone with your skills. You're the first medical person we've seen. We have to get home." "Where's home?" "Bowling Green, 7 miles west." "That's a long walk on open road." "I know." "We have a truck. Carl's truck, the silver Dodge, in the lot. Carl didn't come back for it. We don't know where Carl went. The keys might be in it." I looked at Caleb. His expression shifted to the first genuine calculation since we'd entered the church. A truck. 7 miles in a truck was 4 minutes. 7 miles on foot with Mom was 2.5 hours. On open road, in daylight, with an unknown number of those things between here and home. "Check the truck," Caleb said. I went out. The silver Dodge was parked at the far end of the lot, facing out. a habit of someone who'd been taught to park for exit. Unlocked. Keys in the cup holder. Half a tank of gas. I sat in the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine rolled over, caught, idled. I drove it to the front door. Loading was quick. Mom in the back seat, medication bag in her lap. Dana beside her, knee elevated on the bag. Caleb in the passenger seat. Doors closed, windows up. Pastor Lewis stood at the church door. I rolled down my window. "Thank you," I said. "Be safe." He paused. "If Bowling Green is still there, if things stabilize, we'll be here. Send word if you can." "I will." I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know if Bowling Green was still there. I didn't know if anything stabilized. But I said it because the man had opened his door and given us water and offered his congregants truck. And the only currency I had was a promise I might not be able to keep. We pulled onto the county road, headed west. The drive should have taken 4 minutes. It took 22. 2 miles from the church, the road was blocked not by vehicles, but by people. Living people, about 30 of them, on foot, moving west in a loose column down the center of the road. Families mostly. Some carrying luggage, some carrying children. One man pushing a wheelbarrow loaded with canned goods and a car battery. I slowed to their pace. Caleb said, "Go around, shoulder." "There are kids in the road." Use the shoulder. There are kids on the shoulder. They were everywhere, a river of people flowing west on a 2-lane road with no sidewalk and no shoulder wide enough to pass safely. They heard the truck. Faces turned. Some moved aside. Others didn't. A woman with a baby in a front carrier raised her hand. Not waving, blocking. "Stop! Don't run us over. We're here." I stopped. A man approached the window. 40s, unshaven, wearing a coat over pajamas. "You have room?" "No." He looked into the back seat. Saw Mom, saw Dana. "You have room for one more. My daughter's 8. She can sit on a lap." I looked at the crowd behind him. 30 people, all of them watching the truck, some already moving closer. If I took one child, the calculation changed, not because one child consumed meaningful resources, but because the act of opening the door turned us from transit to triage. And in a crowd of 30, triage with one empty seat is not medicine. It's a lottery performed at the point of desperation. I can't take one and not the others. I'm not asking for the others. I'm asking for her. Behind him, the crowd was tightening. Not threatening, hopeful, which was worse. Hope directed at a truck with 4 seats and no authority creates a pressure that has only 2 outlets. Generosity that becomes catastrophic or refusal that becomes cruelty. There was no third option. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "West, Bowling Green. Heard there's a shelter at the convention center." I didn't know if there was a shelter at the convention center. I didn't know if the convention center existed anymore. But 30 people were walking toward it, and their information rumor, hope, passed mouth to mouth, was the only navigation they had. "Stay on this road. It goes straight into the west side of town. Stay together. Don't split up." That's not what I asked. I know. I'm sorry. I pulled around them, slowly, carefully, the truck easing through the crowd like a boat through reeds. Faces passed my window. An old woman with a cane. A man carrying 2 suitcases, one in each hand. A boy, maybe 12, with a backpack and a look on his face that I recognized the look of someone who has been told to walk and is walking and has stopped asking where. We cleared the column. I accelerated. 2.7 miles, Caleb said. Nobody spoke. The remaining distance was clear. The road ran through a stretch of light commercial, a feed store, a tractor supply, a self-storage facility, and then into the residential grid of Bowling Green's western edge. Our neighborhood, our street, our house. I turned onto Magnolia Lane at 7:14 a.m. The houses were intact. Some had lights on. Most had curtains drawn. 2 had cars running in driveways, engines idling, packed, occupants visible, the decision to leave or stay still being negotiated through windshields. Our house was the 4th on the left. White siding, blue door, the holly bushes Mom planted the year she moved in with us after Dad died. Caleb's car was in the driveway we'd driven separately to Nashville. My car was wherever we'd left the Airbnb, 100 miles and a lifetime away. I pulled Carl's truck into the driveway, turned off the engine. Mom was asleep. She'd fallen asleep in the last 2 miles, her head against the window, mouth slightly open, breathing steady. The medication had taken the edge off her blood pressure, and the seat and the warmth and the motion had done the rest. She slept the way she always slept, completely, as if sleep were a room she entered and locked the door. I didn't wake her immediately. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the house. Blue door, holly bushes. The porch light was on. Caleb had left it on when we'd driven to Nashville 2 days ago. A timer he'd set, a system running in their absence. The light said, "Someone lives here." The light said, "This place is maintained." I felt something shift in my chest, not relief, not exactly, but the nearest thing, a reduction of velocity. The forward motion that had driven us since 3:47 a.m. began to decelerate, and in the space it left, everything I hadn't processed flooded in. The woman on Woodland Street with the toddler, the blanket trailing from the car seat, the minivan where Dana woke up alone, the tire iron man and his wife with the broken collarbone, the thing in the truck cab straining against its seatbelt, the 9 figures in the field, Calvin Embry walking past the church that knew his name, the man asking me to take his 8-year-old daughter, the boy with the backpack. All of it arrived at once, and I gripped the steering wheel. And I did not cry, because I have never cried during or immediately after an incident that's training, that's protocol. That's the wall you build between experience and response, so you can function, but the wall was thinner than it had ever been. And I could feel everything pressing against it. And I knew that the next few hours would determine whether it held. "We're home," I said. Caleb opened his door. Dana opened hers. I reached back and touched Mom's hand. "Mom, we're home." She opened her eyes, looked at the house, and said, "Get me inside." By 8 a.m., we had the house secured. Caleb's word secured. What he meant was all doors locked, all first-floor windows checked, the back sliding door braced with a 2x4 from the garage, the garage door itself manually locked and barricaded with the workbench pushed against it. He moved through the house with the same efficiency he'd shown all night, us turning domestic architecture into defensive architecture, repurposing furniture as structure. Mom was in her room. I'd taken her blood pressure, 148/92, too high but coming down, and given her another dose and a full glass of water and the instruction to stay in bed, which she ignored within 10 minutes, but at least she was sitting in a chair in her room rather than trying to help. Dana sat at the kitchen table. I gave her ice for her knee and ibuprofen and coffee from the machine that still worked because the power was still on, which felt like a miracle of the same magnitude as the truck keys in the cup holder. I called the landline. Dial tone, a sound so ordinary it was disorienting. I called 911. Busy. I called the hospital where I worked. Recording, all non-essential personnel shelter in place. Do not report to facility. I called the number for Bowling Green PD non-emergency. Busy. I called every number I could think of that might tell me whether the world outside this house was organizing or dissolving. And every number either rang into nothing or played a recording that said what the emergency alert had said. Stay home. I put the phone down. Dana, what's your home number? Where would Lily go? She gave me a number. I called it. It rang 14 times. No answer. She might have gone to the school, Dana said. She knows the school. It's 3 blocks from our house. Where's your house? Portland, Tennessee. 60 miles south, on the highway we'd just come from, inside the funnel. I had no way to get there. I had no way to send anyone there. I had a borrowed truck with half a tank, and a family I'd nearly killed getting home, and a woman at my kitchen table whose daughter was somewhere in the space between here and Nashville. Alone, 14 years old, and every mile of the distance between them was a mile I had personally driven through and chosen not to stop. I sat down across from Dana. She was holding the coffee mug with both hands, staring at the surface of the liquid, and I recognized the posture. It's the posture of someone in the waiting room while someone they love is behind the doors. I had seen it 1,000 times. I had never been the door. We'll find her, I said. You don't know that. No, I don't. She looked up. Her eyes were dry, not because she wasn't feeling, because she'd processed past the point where tears were useful. She was in the clinical space, the space I usually occupied. You stopped for me, she said. In the van. Your brother said don't stop, and you stopped. Yes. Why? I didn't have a good answer. The true answer was, because the sliding door was open 8 inches and a voice said help, and I'm trained to respond to that specific combination of factors, an opening and a request, and my body moved before my strategy caught up. The true answer was, I didn't decide. I responded. And the difference between deciding and responding is the difference between Caleb and me. And it has been the difference between Caleb and me since we were children. And on this particular morning, in this particular apocalypse, both approaches kept us alive, and neither one was sufficient alone. Because I could, I said. And stopping was faster than the argument for not stopping. She almost smiled. Almost. From the living room, Caleb called, Nora, come look. I went. He was at the front window, curtain pulled an inch, looking at the street. 2 houses down, the family with the running car in the driveway was pulling out. The car, a Subaru, packed to the headliner, reversed, turned, and headed east, toward the interstate, toward the funnel. Across the street, a man I recognized, Glenn something, retired, kept a nice lawn, was standing on his porch with a hunting rifle, watching the Subaru leave. He saw our curtain move. He raised a hand, not a wave, an acknowledgement. I'm here, you're here, we see each other. I raised mine back. The power will go next, Caleb said. Then the water. We have maybe 48 hours of normal infrastructure. After that, we're on what we have. What do we have? He'd already inventoried. Of course he had. He listed it without notes. Canned goods for 2 weeks at 4 people, longer at rationing. 12 gallons of stored water plus whatever we could fill from the taps before pressure dropped. First aid supplies, what was left in the house, which was more than my depleted field kit. A generator in the garage with 5 gallons of gasoline. 2 flashlights, a battery radio, 1 firearm, a shotgun Dad had left, and 11 shells. That's what we have, he said. That's enough. That's enough for now. Now is a shrinking window. Caleb? I waited until he looked at me. We made it. We made it home. That's not the same as making it. He was right again. He was always right. He was right about the highway, and right about the timing, and right about the kill funnel, and right about the window, and right about the barricade, and right about everything, except the one thing he could never calculate, which was when to stop calculating. When to stand in the living room of the house where his mother was resting and his sister was alive and a stranger he'd allowed into the car was drinking coffee at the table and say, "This is enough. For this minute, this is enough." I couldn't give him that. That wasn't my gift to him, and it wasn't his to receive. What I could give him was the next task, the next problem, the next system to optimize. So I did. We need to fill every container in the house with water before pressure drops. Bathtubs, pots, bottles, anything. Then we need to check the perimeter. Then we need to talk to Glenn across the street. Then we need to figure out how to find a 14-year-old girl in Portland, Tennessee. He looked at me. Something moved in his face. Not a smile, not relief, but a recognition. The recognition of a person who has been given the right input in the right format. "I'll start with the water," he said. He went upstairs. I heard the bathtub start to fill. The power held for 36 hours. The water held for 20. By the time both failed, we had stored enough of each to sustain 4 people for 10 days if we were careful. And Caleb was always careful. Glenn across the street came over on the second morning with a ham radio and a list of frequencies. Dana called Portland on every one. On the third day, someone answered a volunteer relay operator in Gallatin who had a list of names from a shelter at Portland High School. Lily Reeves, age 14, was on the list. Dana cried for the first time that morning. Sitting at the kitchen table, hands over her face, shoulders shaking, while Mom stood behind her and held her the way Mom holds everyone completely, as if grief were something you could carry for someone by pressing your body against theirs. I did not cry. I went outside and stood on the porch and looked at the street where my neighbors' houses sat behind their curtains and their locked doors and their own quiet calculations of survival. And I thought about the man on the highway who asked me to take his daughter. I thought about the fact that I said no. I thought about the fact that I would say no again, tomorrow, in the same situation, with the same variables. And that the certainty of this did not make it right. It made it operational. It made it the decision of a person trained to triage. And triage is not mercy. Triage is math performed on human lives by someone authorized to do the arithmetic. I went back inside. I washed my hands. I checked my mother's blood pressure. I inventoried the supplies. I did the next thing and the next thing and the next, because the next thing is the only territory I have ever been qualified to hold. Caleb plans. Mom endures. I respond. The highway was worse by dawn. He was right about that. He was right about all of it. But being right and being enough are 2 different instruments. And the music this world requires now is written for both of them, played simultaneously.